Welcome to the Queer Witch Project, your resource for all things queer and witchy. I am Damona Peacock, a fabulous, non-binary, neurospicy, ordained queerdo with a fascination for all things cycles, symbolism, and patterns.
And I'm Moonkittee, your queer femme poly kitchen witch and proud geek. Today's topic is Queer Basics of Witchcraft Top Tools.
Top
La-da!
tools.
So this is
Oh,
this is a first we were talking about it, and we're now in our third season. Been doing this for over a year, and we've talked about some really great things, but we haven't talked a lot about some of the basics and
yeah.
fundamentals of actual witchcraft and practicing. So we thought it would be fun to start a series that you'll see in the next several weeks, interspersed with our normal content, about just the queer basics and how we are queering the basics of witchcraft and some of the things that you need to know if you are just starting out, or if you have an interest in just starting out. And the things that we use and the things that are really useful. And for those of you
Even
who have been around for a while, I'd say there's always something to be learned from going back to the basics.
Yep, I was gonna say that even if you're not starting out, that sometimes a good review of the basics, and honestly, I could use a review of the basics. Sometimes I get very much like, I don't want to go through that stuff again. I did that 20 years ago, but then I'm like, oh, I did that 20 years ago. I forgot how important this stuff is. So it is kind of cool to go through it again.
Right. And some of the things that we learned 20 years ago, we forgot or didn't adapt into our practices then, but now they didn't resonate
Mm-hmm.
then, but they may absolutely resonate now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really fun to go back and re-listen and
Yeah,
relearn.
so sometimes it all comes back around again,
Hmm. So,
especially like with the elements. I always see that as very basics, but
mhm.
it always comes up again. It always comes back around.
And it's in
So
everything. It's in the tarot, it's in so many other practices
yeah.
for how things are
And I
linked.
and I know there are there's a growing population of newly awakened witchy folk
Hmm.
who are turning to podcasts and
Hmm.
TikToks and YouTube to get their information. And there are people who want access to the basics. And I don't believe in making people jump through hoops just to get access to that kind of information. A lot of people just might be like, go out and read a book. And hey, not everybody learns that way. Sometimes
Hmm.
we're auditory learners, sometimes we're visual learners. Sometimes reading books put us to sleep.
Hmm.
That'd be me.
And sometimes you can't trust some of the main big publishers
Uh,
or big mainstream kind of stuff. It's that weird sensation. I know we could touched on internet prophecy in our last episode, but in this one where so many people now are getting their news or getting other information through things like TikTok or
yeah.
Instagram or small people who are sharing
Hmm.
things rather than large conglomerates. And I think this
It's
ties into the basics of witchcraft and stuff. Oh, it's a way to learn
hmm
in a way that feels cozy. So you feel
yeah.
like you're one on one with someone without it being awkward.
Yay! I mean, it's always a little awkward with us, right?
Right.
You're like, ah.
I'm a little
Um,
awkward, so it's always going to feel awkward to me. But no, it's also an easier way to see what resonates. Like I said, what works with
yeah.
you and what doesn't, and you can take and you can leave without feeling like, oh, I read this book, I have to do what they said, or I took it from this class, or I went to this coven and these are the practices that we do, and therefore
Hmm.
I can't do anything else. It
Right.
allows for a little more flexibility.
Yeah, and I also like to say that we're not always going to remember everything.
Mm-mm. Oh
And I
God,
know
no.
we, at the end of our podcast, we're like, yeah, send us messages, let us know. So even though we're not at the end yet, I'm just going to say if we have forgotten something that you see as a basic tool as we go over our ideas, make sure you leave us a comment or send us an email because we want to know what what
Hmm.
you learned as very, what are your basics? Share with us. Let's help build a community of people because I know there are people out here seeking this information who really
Absolutely.
want to learn. It's almost like a rebirth of oral traditions in a
Hmm.
way.
Very, very much
Um,
so.
yeah.
And
Sometimes
with
it's
that,
just easier to learn in a conversation.
hmm and with that being said, what we will be talking about are things that are considered open practices. We're not going to be discussing
Yeah.
deep diving into very specific spiritual practices that are not our own. So these are
Yeah.
general open tools, general open concepts
Hmm.
that anyone is able to access, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender choice, orientation, faith. These
Hmm.
kinds of tools and things work across all faiths and all
Hmm.
spiritual practices. So
Yep.
that's why it's a basics.
Speaking of the basics and the tools, what
Hmm.
are some of your go-tos? What are your top tools that you tend to like catch yourself going to constantly as a practicing witch?
For me, it tends to be candles, for one. Candles,
Hmm.
crystals, jars. There is definitely a meme and definitely a stereotype that witches like to collect little glass jars because we do.
I really
You
like the whole, oh, you can be bigger than that person. No, put them in a jar.
put it in a jar.
You don't
Or
need to be
walking
bigger than that
around
person. Put them in a jar.
picking up rocks, picking up random rocks. That is
Hmm.
absolutely that kind
Earthing.
of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, well,
jars,
and
tools.
crystals and rocks, they
Mm-hmm.
have an elemental connection to
Mm-hmm.
earth, but also they have like their own vibrations. They have
Mm-hmm.
their own kind of archetypal personalities.
Mm-hmm.
But they are kind of a place that a lot of people get started
Mm-hmm.
is being feeling this connection to gemstones, this connection to the earth, to these rocks, to these
Mm-hmm.
pretty rocks that have their cool vibes, and sometimes they do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they draw in certain energies, at least some people believe.
Draw in
And
energies, amplify energies, or protect
mhm,
from other types of energies.
mhm. Yeah, they have really cool tools. They work as tools. But they also can work as like personalities. Candles very much
Mm-hmm.
burn candles a lot, a
Mm-hmm.
lot, a lot. The other thing I like to burn is incense. I
Mm-hmm.
love burning incense. I love sending the idea of sending prayers along with incense is also like sending an offering or
Mm-hmm.
respect.
Herbs. As a kitchen witch,
Mhm.
I use a lot of salts and herbs, salt blends, herbs in my cooking, herbs in if I'm making or baking or something along those lines. And there's lots of different magical properties to herbs and
You can
things
even
as well that you
burn.
can use. You can burn them. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Along with the resins.
Mm-hmm.
You can make your own incense really if you
Mm-hmm.
wanted with herbs and resin. Oh, I just love the idea that herbs add magical properties to your magical meals.
Absolutely. And they don't have to. Again, we've talked about past about
Hmm.
intention and putting things in,
Yep.
but no, these are all relatively accessible things. It's really easy to find
Hmm.
little jars. I mean, you get a can of pickles and you clean the when you're done with it, you clean the container and you got a really useful jar that can store and serve a lot of things. So collecting
Hmm.
jars, candles and lighters, you can get candles everywhere from Dollar Tree to Target to whatever. You don't necessarily have to get fancy magical witchy candles.
You can make them
Hmm.
fancy, magical, and witchy yourself by anointing them with your favorite oils,
Hmm.
um, sprinkling herbs in them. You can take a toothpick or a needle and you can carve sigils, symbols, words,
Hmm.
messages, intentions into the wax and then burn it. I also, speaking of herbs and burning herbs, I know bay leaves are a spell that you can write on bay leaves and then
Hmm.
let them burn. So, with that said, maybe also one of the basic tools would be a receptacle from which you can burn things in, whether that's
Yes.
a dish with salt or sand, or a cauldron,
Uh,
incense burners.
Fire pits. If you've got a backyard with
Yeah.
a fire pit, that's also can be used. So yeah, all of those kinds of fireproof bases, very important to
Mm-hmm.
have. If you're going to use fire magic, you need something non-flammable to burn on.
Yes.
Um, but there's also the other tools that we think of that are kind of, I don't want to say stereotypically magical, but are the most generally associated with them would be like tarot or oracle decks,
Yes.
pendulums,
Divination tools. Yeah.
exactly. Those kinds of things that are,
Something that can kind of get you out of your own mind and
hmm
into receiving intuitive perceptions,
hmm
whether
messages from
that's like a
spirit.
black mirror or, yeah, exactly.
Hmm
Pendulums, like you said. But yes, I would say that a lot of decks are my go-to
hmm
magical tools because sometimes I'm a really good listener when people need someone to just confide in.
hmm
I will take confessions, I will give counsel, but what I love about the cards is they help me figure out what to say. Because there are
hmm
times where you just don't really know what to say, but the cards know what to say, and then it helps me get the message across.
hmm And for me, the cards, oftentimes when I need my own message, it's because I don't want to listen to what
Mm,
I know the right answer is going to be, but the cards put it plainly, and it's like you can't hide from this. You know the answer, you know you need to listen to the answer. Or if I'm being harder on myself, the cards will tell me that. 'Cause it's a lot easier to be compassionate for someone else in someone else's situation than it sometimes
yeah,
is to be for yourself when you're in that same.
yeah. I don't even, I mean, I will do one card pulls for myself, but I won't go into any in-depth pulls on anything that I really need insight on. I will swap readings with someone. I have people that I
Hmm
trust, like you,
hmm
and a couple others that I can just be like, I really need a reading on this topic. I don't read myself very well. I need you to read me for filth, please, because otherwise I can just go la 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 la. I can't hear you, spirit. But at least if somebody's reading it for me, it's an accountability buddy to be
hmm
like checking in on you. Like, do you remember what spirit said?
hmm
Don't put up with that shit.
Right.
Yeah, I really appreciate the community of readers
hmm
for that. Yeah, so that's a good spiritual tool too. Is people
hmm
seeking out mentorships. You don't have to join a cult. You don't have to join a group to
hmm
learn. You can find people who will just take you on one-on-one.
hmm
Um, just make sure that my approach on mentorship is that it has to be an even exchange and that they have as much to learn from you as you have to learn from them,
hmm
and therefore you are not a subordinate or a gopher, and you need to be learning things
hmm
like otherwise they're just taking advantage of you. So there's one other thing that I think of tools wise that's actually really important is writing,
hmm
journaling, tools, paper. Sometimes I've written things that I want to release or even intentions that I want to manifest on paper and then released it either in water or in fire, or really just keeping a record of dreams or messages
hmm
or thoughts and feelings, so writing is such an important tool. I
hmm
will go find old journals of mine that have notes from classes that I took
hmm
or downloads that I got after rituals. Yeah, so it's always kind of fun to rediscover what was going on back in the day
hmm I have
through
a couple of
songwriting.
several times I've tried to start books of shadows with notes and stuff, and I'll go and then I'll stop, and they're all those half things in journals floating
Now, one of
around.
these
Like,
days,
how will I get them all into one location? I have no idea, but yeah, I totally understand the writing things down as you're
yeah,
learning them.
yeah,
Um, and even if it's digitally now, I mean, we have access to
yep.
digital writing and PDFs and Word files and all that other kind of stuff you can absolutely
I
save and do electronically.
I have thousands of notes saved in my notes app on my phone.
Hmm
That's where a lot of my poetry goes. That's where I write my classes, outlines,
hmm
wedding ceremonies. I have thousands of digital writings. Yeah, I love that the digital world lets us be photo hoarders and
hmm
screenshot hoarders and writing hoarders, and it's just all in one little pocket.
I love that. And those are the I think those are a good selection of some of the basic tools and stuff. Again,
Mm-hmm.
these are things you can find everywhere. You can find candles everywhere. You can find salt everywhere. You can
Mm-hmm.
find herbs at your grocery store,
Yep.
jars. Like I said, you can recycle them from everything. All of these things. Tarot decks, you generally need to be buyer gifted, but same thing, you can find them everywhere from Amazon to small bookshops to
Mm-hmm.
antique stores. And
Mm-hmm.
I found some very cool decks in just random locations and game stores periodically too. There's just
Deck
some really cool
swaps.
things.
I love deck swaps.
Oh, deck swaps are so much fun.
And if you've
Um,
never been to one, make you can host one. Get your
yeah, see
friends
if you can.
together and host a deck swap. Yeah.
So that's really a cool way to do it. But there are some other secondary tools which tend to, I don't know, I call them secondary tools, but they tend to be more high magic, more fancy,
Mm.
if you can call it.
Like
I'm trying to
formal.
formal. Thank you. A little more
Yeah,
formal in
formal
what you're looking at.
ritual tools like you would put on an altar.
Yes. Hold for ritual, or if you're doing a ritual for yourself, you would have
Mm-hmm.
something. It's sometimes nice to, you can absolutely get the same results from a dollar store candle, a chipped IKEA bowl of water, a little plate
Yeah.
of table salt, and some herbs. But you can also find
Mm-hmm.
something that calls to you that's a little bit more formal and a little more
For
ritualistic that you can use. So things like athames, wands, chalices, pentacle.
and something to be said is also sourcing things yourself
Hmm.
or getting things that were are custom made or artisan made,
Hmm.
supporting small businesses, but also you can craft like go find a tree that's offering some of its sticks for you and create yourself a wand. You can also craft these kind of tools for your altars.
That's, I think, secondary tools like was where books come into place for me. They are
Hmm.
more of a secondary tool rather than a primary tool in the sense
Right.
that you can learn things from books, absolutely, but you learn more from doing sometimes than from just sitting and thinking and reading something.
I definitely learn more from doing than I do from books.
Hmm.
But you mentioned the Book of Shadows,
Hmm.
and that's another thing where a lot of people get very hung up on what's supposed to be in a Book of Shadows, or, what are the rules for a Book of Shadows, or,
Hmm.
and really the Book of Shadows is just supposed to be something that you can put things into that you find have worked for you, so
Hmm.
that you can go back and reference things that works for you. So maybe you find a spell on the internet and you take a screenshot of it and you try it out and it works, but you had to make some changes to it. That's probably something you would scribble in a book of shadows. It doesn't have to be terribly formal, and it doesn't have to look like the book that the witches inherit on Charmed. Is
But
That's
don't
an
we
old
all
90s
want the book?
reference. I know we do. We
We
did look for
want
it pretty
that book
rad.
so much, and we
And
want it to
some
magically open
scrapbookers, yeah, right.
to
And some
magically open exactly where you need
scrapbookers
it.
are good at making stuff like that. So if that's your art, if
Hmm.
that's your craft, then by all means make yourself like a beautifully elaborate book of shadows. Hell, if you're really good at it, you could sell that kind of a
Hmm.
thing. But I think the book of shadows is supposed to be very like a personal endeavor
Hmm.
of things that you personally have tried, have learned by doing, and want to remember them.
Hmm. I know they a lot of times they do sell now pre-made book of shadows and stuff. I'm saying
Yeah.
here's this, but it does lose something when it's not your own, when you're copying
Yeah.
from someone else. So,
And I can get inspiration from other
hmm.
people's spells, but I don't always have access to everything they suggest. And sometimes you have to change things to what you can, afford to do, what you have access to.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think when you personalize like your own book of shadows,
Hmm.
it's like you've figured out what works for you.
Right. And again, I have several spell books where I've taken the spells and used them, and some worked and some didn't, and
Yeah.
that so I've taken those I've gotten spells from other places that have been in books, but
Yeah.
I don't need I have a book of, I think someone gave me a book of 1,000 spells or something like that. I'm going,
Mm-hmm.
there is no point in my life when I'm going to do that many spells or have need for that many things. But there are some things in there that were very, very useful and
Useful.
very helpful. And it's weeding through some of those things. But no, you talked about building your own Book of Shadows and building your own wands and stuff. And I think that's one of those things that we can do is make something if we don't
Mm-hmm.
have access to it. Like you said, find a small crafter or support the small artists. But like you mentioned, we can absolutely go out and build or make something of our own from found objects or from things that resonate with you.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about how to find ethically sourced
Hmm.
materials, ethically sourced tools, like asking small businesses where they get their
Hmm.
gemstones from, if they were mined in an environmentally conscious way. Even when you pick a twig up off the
Hmm.
ground, thanking the tree for
Hmm.
its offering and sacrifice. There's a lot to be said about ethically sourced witchy materials.
Hmm.
What do you think of when we talk about ethically sourced?
I think it's a matter of knowing where it's coming from and that there is respect being paid to it. One of the things that I have and I made myself was I made a wand from things that I had a pomegranate tree that I had in my backyard. There was
Mm.
a branch that came up. Oh, sorry. I had a pomegranate tree and a cherry tree. I made several ones. This one that I have is off the cherry tree. I took the cherry tree. I took a peacock feather. So I have the phoenix feather inside. It's modeled off that idea of a Harry Potter wand, which again,
Mm-hmm.
there's not saying that's not problematic in a whole lot of ways with J.K. Rowling, but the idea of we can't deny that Harry Potter did open up a lot of generations to the concept of magic and
Mm.
the connection to magic and changing your environment and being who you are in it, regardless of who she is. So you take the source material and you make it your own. And so using things, using ingredients, it was really easy to sand it down, make it, and I made one for my core family. So I know I gave you one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep, I
as I
have one
was
of
making
those.
it, there's so many different things
Crystals.
into it. There's crystals embedded, there's herbs that are embedded in there. And as I was making it and crafting it, there was music that was being played. There was lots of different things that go into the making of it. So you can find
Mm-hmm.
all of these things are found things. The only thing that was on here was the hot glue to kind of make the wand and to hold everything together, and a little bit of paint was all I paid for this. So everything else was found things that I had from other
Mm.
crafting materials. But talking about ethically resourcing them, it is really challenging to get some of those things. So I had the found objects, but if I was going to like a Target or something like that, a big box store where they may sell pre-made wands, especially if you're
Mm.
looking like at a Harry Potter style, or even some of the big crafters or online retailers, you don't necessarily know where those things are coming from. And that's where it
Mm-hmm.
can be more of a challenge. There are a lot of things that you can try to do. And I think along with being ethically sourced is being mindful, but also being forgiving if you accidentally buy something that is not. And also realizing and what is practical and what is not. I would absolutely love to shop nothing but small business retailers. But my pocketbook
Can't
doesn't
always
allow
afford
it,
to.
and I can't always afford
Yeah.
to do that, or I need something quicker. And so, yes, I pray to the great God that is Amazon, and get a lot of things through Amazon, because it is easier. And so I recognize that, but I try to offset that in other ways. So when it comes to the stuff that is truly in my magical practice, I try to find things that are ethically sourced where I can by going to small businesses or going to Etsy stores or going to
Mm-hmm.
crafters and craft fairs. But for the things that I can't get or that have come from large retailers or places where I'm not sure, I will usually try to cleanse them first, or I will say a prayer of thanksgiving and bless them based on where they came from. So it's a matter of if I don't know, I give thanks back for the gift that it is, but also
Mm.
acknowledge I don't know where this came from. May the the people who have put in the time and energy, may they be blessed, may they have the the tools and the funds and stuff that they need to survive. So it's trying to give back and giving back in a way that if you don't know what you where you got something, you can still try to honor where it came from and give back to give back the intention, basically.
Well, and also when you are harvesting stuff yourself, like some spells require graveyard dirt. When you go and source something yourself, you can leave offerings to the spirits.
Hmm.
Like in a graveyard, I was always taught spirits like spirits. So little, I like to buy the little things of alcohol,
Hmm.
whiskey or rye or whatever, and pour one out for the dead, and
Hmm.
then collect some graveyard dirt. The other thing is, making sure things are like biodegradable and that you're not
Hmm.
like trashing, you're not leaving trash in a natural environment. So
Hmm.
whatever offerings you do leave, making sure that they are healthy and respected to the natural wildlife, whether that be the plants or birds or
Hmm.
rodents or animals that might, honestly, offerings to the animals, uh, thanking the earth around and its inhabitants for the offerings. And you can also just grow your own stuff too.
Hmm.
If you're have a green thumb and you have the time and the space, you can be growing your own herbs. You can making
Hmm.
your own uh bundles of herbs to burn. There's a lot of different ways that we can explore putting a lot of thought and intention into sourcing our tools.
You've now done the work to do it yourself, and there is a power inherent in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there is definitely its own magic. Even just finding like the perfect little this or that, or having it gifted to you by
Hmm.
mentors or friends. Like when you give us the wand, that way if ever I'm pulling altar tools down and trying to find a set, I can be like, oh, this one has the special memory. It's nostalgia
Hmm.
of it having been a gift. And with that said, if you are a magical practitioner,
Hmm.
think about the meaning behind gifting these tools to your up and coming witch folk too.
Hmm.
Passing things down. Also, their thrift stores.
Yes.
Thrift stores are amazing source. Garage sales, passing things down, making sure things are being recycled, being a resource for people. If you have things that you don't use anymore, making sure they get passed down to those who could use them.
Hmm.
All of those are ways to really consciously, ethically help with magical tools,
Hmm.
whether you're giving or receiving.
Absolutely. We're not harvesting wild sage without permission, right? We're not trespassing
Yeah.
on private lands without permission. We're not taking from protected lands. But what if I am going down and I see a small couple tents set up at the side of the road, or I'm at a fair and festival and they've got vendors who are selling sage bundles or other things? Would that be considered a closed practice because it might be, say, a white sage bundle, but it's a clearly native person who is sitting there selling their wares? Would that be something that would be offensive or not?
I think that it's important to recognize that they receive support by offering their artists create the tools that they are willing to create and offer for sale. So it's really great to ask the person selling it, what it is what exactly it is, what's the best way to use it respectfully. But I think that it's important that we also can support these
Hmm.
crafters and artisans. But definitely ask any questions and make sure that you are using things respectfully, or you're not trying to appropriate into closed practices. That would be my advice. What do you
Hmm.
think?
I think the same. I think if it was coming down to it, if I'm going to feel a lot better using a tool from someone that I purchased directly from,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's a craft side vendor, roadside vendor, especially, because when you can tell that they're handmade than I would be from purchasing something that was mass marketly produced.
Right,
Because again, there's that personal connection, and this person worked, and it is supporting that livelihood of it. But I know
right.
that's the challenge when it seems things like, oh my God, you can't use white sage, you can't use Palo Santo, you can't use other things. I think there is a truth to that, in that those are very specific herbs and very specific items that are specific to a particular practice, and there are a lot of alternatives that are open. But by that same token, if you are purchasing it from someone, you have confirmed with that person that, hey, this is my practice. Is this something that I am able to do? And you've gotten that permission, then it's
Yes.
okay. But if you haven't done the work to ask the permission, to get the guidance, to
Hmm.
see that you are doing it correctly, then yeah, it's far better to use something that is open.
And I have a friend who is indigenous and has given me sage bundles and lavender bundles and,
Hmm.
all kinds of different bundles that they've made. And I use them because they were given to me intentionally and with love and handmade by someone who made them with the intention that they get used. And
Hmm.
so, honestly, out of respect for that gift that I've been given,
Hmm.
I want to take in that offering
Hmm.
and use it for the tool that they've offered it to be. Because it's always made with the intention of love and thoughtfulness, and so much. Sometimes that means more to me than the tool itself. Is how it was made and how it was given to me, and what the intention behind it is.
Context is everything.
It is a lot. Was there any other tools that we forgot to mention?
I'm trying to think of other tools that we mentioned again, rocks, crystals. I'm literally kind of like staring around my space going, did I miss anything? We did, I know what we missed. We kind of touched on it, but we didn't talk about the smelly stuff. We didn't talk
Like
about
oils?
incense and oils and diffusers and simmer
Well,
pots and perfumes. All of those things are also very good magical tools and have magical properties that are very easily accessible.
I'm wearing the Bridget oil. That is my favorite
Hmm.
oil. I went and bought myself a whole new one as a birthday present to myself, just
Nice.
because I love the connection of it. I love the smell of it. I totally forgot about oil diffusers. We did talk a little bit about incense and burning herbs,
Hmm.
but oil diffusers are really fun. I'm not going to go out there on a uh, pyramid scheme
Hmm.
uh,
Right.
oil sales person over the hair, but I do dabble in some oils from time to time, and I do like some good smelly stuff in the air and the magic that that can be.
The other one that just crossed my mind is rope or a string of twine.
String.
Not magic is a real thing. Rope magic,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're in there. And here's one that we kind of joked about earlier. We're talking about basic tools of the trade, and without getting a little bit PG-13 here, there are other tools that can be used for certain types of practices of magic that involve self and pleasure and the sharing of pleasure. And those can also be magical tools,
Yes.
depending on the context that you're using them in.
The idea is an energy exchange, a raising of energy and
Hmm.
putting intention and energy into something that those tools can very much raise the vibe, so to speak.
Hmm. Magic wands are awesome.
There are so many different kinds of magic wands.
Exactly. But no, seriously, that it's there. The fact that kind of circling back, the tools can be anything. They truly can. It's really a matter of what enhances your own practice, I
Yeah.
think. And
And we've mentioned salt
hmm.
here and there, but I wanted to just do a little salt rant.
Hmm.
Salt is one of the most easily accessible and most effective magical tools,
Hmm.
particularly when it comes to protection and neutralizing energy. It is literally giving it back to the earth. If in doubt, scrub it with salt.
Right. No,
Yeah,
that's
throw some
real.
salt at it. So salt is not a minor tool. It is pretty major.
It is a very major
Um,
tool.
Pretty easily accessible. You can even like energetically cleanse your space by sprinkling some salt on their floors and then sweeping it all up and then dumping in whatever energy it absorbed. out. You can put
Mhm.
salt in your windows and your thresholds.
Mhm.
It's a very good neutralizer.
Right. And you can mix salt with a lot of other things. You can mix it with herbs, you can mix it with graveyard dirt or ash, a lot of things to enhance and ground your working.
Well, I think that covers a lot of our basic tools, and I
Yes,
hope that if we have forgotten anything important, people will send us comments and messages to remind us so that we can, if we have to, revisit more of the basics.
we absolutely will.
So thank you for listening to the Queer Witch Project. And if you like what you heard, go ahead and leave us a comment. Give us some 5 stars, thumbs up, follow, subscribe, likes. All of those things help us out immensely, and we are deeply grateful for your interactions.
Absolutely. And if there is a topic you would like to know more about or an episode topic you would like to suggest, please contact us at thequeerwitchproject@gmail.com or find us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram with the handle at queerwitchproject. We upload every other week. And remember, queerness is a key to magic.
Be yourself and love rebelliously. Bye.
Bye. Mhm.
If in doubt, rub it out. No, that sorry. Wrong.
Wrong one. Wrong topic.
Ah!